Hi, welcome or welcome back to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Maria Andrea. It's been a little while, and I am here for a book review. So, if you're new to this channel, welcome. One of the things that I have been doing, this is my second year, is trying to celebrate Latin American literature by creating like a book list. Last year I did a book club. This year what I did was a book list. And I posted a list of 12 books that I wanted to read this year, 11 books that I wanted to read this year. And those books are books that I wanted to read and hype and talk about on my channel so that you, the audience, would be able to find them and would at least, maybe if you'd heard of them, be able to have somebody tell you what the reading experience was like for those books, or just be able to have conversations about these books online. So for the month of May, my book to read from the book list was My Mother Cursed My Name by Anamely Salgado Reyes. So, okay, this book was published in 2025 by Simon & Schuster. I learned about the book through my local indie bookstore. So my local indie bookstore was having an author launch the book. So Anamely was going to be at the bookstore talking about her book, signing books, and the bookstore owner is my friend, and she said, "Hey, I think you might really like this book. You maybe want to come in and stop by and meet the author." So I did, and I had never heard of this book. I was intrigued by the artwork, the title, the presentation that the author gave about the book. So I purchased a hardcover copy. It had just been released. It was a launch party, and the author signed my book. And Emily was gracious enough to sign my book. And I told her right there and then last year that I was going to put this on my list for 2026 and that I would read it and have an online discussion about it. And she was interested. And so I said, I'll reach out to you again once I've read it, and then we can go from there. So I read the book. I just finished it this week. We are in June. I meant to read it for May. I didn't actually get to it in May, so I started it in June and I just finished it. It's taken me about 2 weeks to read it, and I loved it. So let's talk about it. What is this book about? My Mother Cursed My Name is a multi-generational story featuring a family of Olivares women. This is a matriarchy book. There are really very few men in this story in the family that we know much about. The family is centered mostly around the women and the lineage, the matriarchal lineage. So the funny thing is that the names that are given to these daughters, every woman has a daughter, and the daughter is named in a way to bless or place an intention on their name, that the name will have an impact on their personality and their opportunities for prosperity and for survival and being in the world. So we start out with Justa, and Justa, her name means justice. She turns out to be cruel and unjust. She has a daughter, and she just finds everything is like not okay, and so she decides that she's going to name her daughter Calamidades, because calamities, right? So that she will be named Calamidades, and so then maybe the opposite will happen, kind of like a reversal of the curse. So she'll say, I'm going to name her Calamidades, so that she knows how to fare with bad things that happen, and she won't be faced by anything that happens. Like, she will be able to face all negative events that happen in her life with just grace and be able to overcome everything that comes her way. Calamidades turns out to be filled with resentment. So she doesn't end up being able to navigate easy breezily and be gracious about things. She ends up being very resentful. So she ends up having a daughter, and she names daughter Victoria, saying, well, Victoria will be victorious and everything will go well for her. And she will be a winner and she'll win at everything that she does. And then what happens is Victoria ends up failing at everything. Victoria has a daughter and names her daughter Olvido, so that, like oblivion, so that she will forget. She'll be able to forgive and forget easily. She won't have any resentment like Calamidades did, and she will be able to just be able to get through life with just forgiveness. Well, Olvido is actually unforgiving. She's very strict and unforgiving. She has a daughter named Angustias, and she names her daughter Angustias, angst, worry, so that her daughter will always be very type A, very conscientious, worry about everything, be prepared for every possible situation, so that she doesn't suffer the consequences of things that don't go well for her. Well, Angustias ends up being very carefree, not type A at all, really not conscientious, more spontaneous. And she just takes life as it comes and does not worry at all about anything ever. And then Angustias has a daughter and is like tired of these names, right? That just like being named angst and worry. And so she wants the opposite for her daughter. So she wants her daughter to be happy and be full of joy and be just this bubble. And Angustias is very much that bubbly personality. So she wants her daughter to be more like that. Well, the daughter ends up being named Felicitas. And Felicitas is supposed to be happiness, like felicidad, right? Well, she's born with a sour personality, and she's always like having this like constant scowl and puckering and just very, very like stoic and sour-faced. And so there's a charm and a humor in which these characters are drawn by their names and their personalities, how their personalities carry out, and the things that they go through because of their personalities. And it's really quite hilarious in some parts. I found myself laughing out loud at some of the things that they were faced with. This particular book, so Justa passes away, Calamidades passes away, Victoria dies at childbirth, leaving Olvido to be raised by a great aunt, Tia Daria. So then the story follows Olvido, who is the grandmother figure in this book. Olvido, in the beginning, we know Olvido turns up as an apparition, as a ghost, and she appears to Felicitas, her granddaughter, as a ghost. And Felicitas is the only person who can see Olvido and know that Olvido has passed away. Angustias gets notified of her mother's passing by a phone call. And is trying to understand, how, like, she thinks her daughter maybe knew that her mother had passed away, but isn't sure, and she doesn't really want to believe that. She doesn't want to believe that her daughter saw her mother or that knew of her passing. She's in denial about that. So you see just the relationships, the dynamics forming between Olvido, Angustias, and Felicitas, and how they each have a relationship with one another that the other one does not understand. And that creates conflict within the family. They each have a magical ability. So Olvido can cook food that lowers inhibitions and frees truths. And Angustias sees auras in color, and she can see that people have a cloud about them, and what color that cloud is what their state of mind is, what their mood is. And Felicitas sees dead people's spirits. I annotated this book like crazy. There's so many funny moments in here, so many nods to culture, um, specifically to like Mexican American culture and border culture living on the Rio Grande Valley. The author, Anamely Salgado Reyes, is from the Rio Grande Valley, as so am I. So we have that in common, and I was able to see just nods to places and refrains and cultural nods. And I think that I don't want to go too much into spoilers, but through just this event that happens with Olvido's passing, the family, Angustias and her daughter Felicitas, have to return home. Angustias and her daughter Felicitas left home when Felicitas was a baby, and as a result of leaving home, Angustias has had a distant relationship from her mother, and she's coming home to bury her mother, and Olvido has very specific wishes for what she wants to be done with her remains. And um, this is all creating a lot of tension for Angustias. And the only person that is caught in the middle between Olvido's wishes, end of life wishes, and Angustias's actual plans is Felicitas, the young daughter, the granddaughter. So it's all bubbling in conflict and family dynamics. We explore in this novel the notion of home and what it means to come home, home to people, home to family, home to culture, home to a house, home to a place, home to a language, to music. There's just so much to come home to, and what does it mean to be home? What makes a home a home? All of those things are explored, particularly through also the lens of immigration. Olvido is an immigrant. She has to travel to the United States from her border town in Mexico. So she lives on the other side of the border, and she crosses the border to come into the United States to escape conflict in her home. And I'll just let you read that and understand more of that. So Olvido makes a decision to leave home to come across the border to the United States. Angustias is Mexican American. She's born in the Rio Grande Valley, and then she leaves home when she becomes pregnant with, or after she gives birth to Felicitas, but when she becomes pregnant, creates a lot of family issues and a distancing from her mother, and then ends up leaving the house at a very young age with her baby and leaves the state. So then when Olvido dies, Angustias has to come home. And what is she coming home to, and where is home now? Um, and finding that and that journey home and what that feels. There's a bunch of like mixed emotions. One of them at the beginning is nostalgia for home. There's a sense of homesickness and longing, and there's a yearning that is discovered through the story, particularly through Felicitas. Um, and how these women all find their way home and their peace, both their peace, their inner peace, and their actual rest, and being able to just say, "This is my place to land. This is where I settle." Um, and the way that all of this comes through to fruition is through magical realism elements, and through their magical abilities and the writer's magical realism techniques to let us feel the emotions, the depth of emotions in the characters, actually gives the characters like a full embodiment. And I feel like this is very much in the canon alongside como Agua para Chocolate, by Lara Esquivel. I would put it alongside Oye by Melissa Mogollón, The Inheritance of Orquidea Divina by Zoraida Córdova, and there's elements of this novel that remind me of the writing of Sandra Cisneros. There's elements that remind me of Isabel Allende. There's elements that remind me of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. There's just so so much to contemplate and to think about and to feel. I ended up creating a playlist for this. I'll share that. And there's a coziness about it as well. This is not like a cozy mystery. I don't even want to pigeonhole it into like a genre or subgenre. There is a sense of coziness. So I would recommend this book for people who like cozy literature. If cozy is your vibe, this is a good book. If you like magical realism elements, this is where you'll find that. If you like multi-generational stories, there's that going for this book too. If you like multiple points of view, this is a great story for that. And as someone who lives in South Texas where the story takes place, and someone who is an immigrant and someone who is aligned with the culture of the family in this book, then I would say that this is a very well told, very relatable story. And I found myself laughing out loud and just really enjoying the humor of the author. Actually, she has a pretty good way of writing characters and particularly dialogue and humor. I just found so much to laugh at. There's one scene here where Olvido is having a or I think it's Olvido having a conversation, or at one point is listening in on a conversation, and somebody is complaining about their daughter being vegan, and I'm vegan, and the way that that is written is pretty hilarious to me. I'm trying to find it. Oh, there's so many things. There's so many nods to stuff, to pop culture, to books. I just ran into like a reference to R.L. Stine and Goosebumps and Fear Street. This is dialogue. This is funny. It says, this is a dialogue between Angustias and her mother's neighbors. Angustias tries to remember a funny anecdote about Olvido. She tries and tries, there are none. Her head hurts. You know, she says, pushing back her chair, Felicitas is probably wondering where I am. Could I have a glass of milk? I promised to bring it back. The glass, not the milk. Of course, but you don't want to eat first, Samara says as she stands, or bring Felicitas over. Y'all don't have to change out of your pajamas. My son Gustavo, he refuses to change out of this new Star Wars set I bought him. No, that's fine, Angustias insists. She contorts her finger to secure the two mugs and glass between her hands. I want to hurry to get to the funeral home as early as possible. Oh, I can drive you. Felicitas can stay here and play with Gustavo. Thank you, Angustia says, already making her way out the door. Felicitas isn't the playing type. Though unless you have some murder mystery board games. Oh, no, I don't think we... A Ouija board? Doña Sarai gasps and signs a cross over her chest, tight-lipped. Samara shakes her head. Then, yeah, I think she'd rather spend the day with me. Thank you for the coffee. Angustia shouts from across the lawn. That a Ouija board, that's something that is like such a relatable and relevant, like funny, that that would be a good way to like have somebody not want to play with you, or the grannies to not want their children to play with you. I cannot find it, but there's this one section where somebody's become a vegan and it's like, oh, they're a vegan. Like, it's the funniest thing, and it just reminds me of just how taboo it is in this culture to be a vegan. Anyway, so that was funny. I laughed. There were a lot of little moments of just giggling and fun times with this book. So I am rating this book 5 stars because I enjoyed it thoroughly. My enjoyment reading the book was just a 5-star time with the book. This is a debut novel by Anamely Salgado, and I am looking forward to anything else that she writes. I'm game for reading. This felt like a magical debut, a book full. One of the blurbs said it was spellbinding, and I really did feel that. Just the magic in this is really palpable. And yeah, I cannot wait to read anything else that she writes, and I am honored that she agreed to an interview. So stay tuned because up next we will be interviewing Anamely Salgado Reyes. Okay, this is a first for me on my channel. Welcome to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Maria Andrea, and if you're new to this channel, this is the first time that I get the honor of interviewing one of my favorite authors and get to just fangirl. So I am so honored, and thank you, Anamely, for joining me today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and that I
And
get to discuss the story with you.
for the audience, if you don't know Anamely, she is Anamely Salgado Reyes, the author of My Mother Cursed My Name. This novel is one of the novels I put on my Books and Bocadillos um, book list. And I just read it in the month of, well, I was supposed to read it in the month of May, but May was a bit hectic. So I just finished it this week. And I was so excited that I finally got to read this book and was so just one of the words that is on the cover that describes it is spellbinding. And I did feel like that spellbinding effect where I was like, oh my goodness, where has this book been? Why haven't I read it? And I want to gush about it. So here we are. We're going to be talking about Anamely's journey with writing My Mother Cursed My Name. So welcome again. And I just showed you my book and you see how tabbed it is. And I got to annotate some of it and write notes inside of the book. And I'm just curious, Anamely, how does it feel when you see readers just show you the books once they've read them?
Very flattered and happy and also thankful that someone would take the time and care to engage with the story in a way I engaged with the story. I mean, I know I wrote it, but I also had to reread it and think about what I had written. And I can't remember if I did annotations. I don't think I do that, even with the other books I read. But everyone's brain works differently, and how they remember things is also different. And just taking the time to like really think deeply about the story, and it just makes me really happy and thankful. So thank you. I see all your annotations and your tabs and the different colors. So it's not just, oh, this is important or this stood out. There's different elements that I guess you found like patterns or do you do
Yeah.
that for all your books?
You know, I don't do this for all of my books, but just for the books that I feel I'm really having a conversation with when I'm reading them. Like sometimes a book speaks to me in the moment, and I feel like it's bringing out a lot of things. And especially when I'm reading alone, I think that when you're reading with a group, you might just tab it and then you might be able to just say the things out loud. But when you're reading alone, sometimes you just need to let things out. Um, the one thing I will say that I wish was in the book that wasn't, but I made it for myself was a like a little family tree. So I
Mm.
jotted down like the names of the women in
Mhm.
this lineage, and I could keep coming back to it and what their names meant because names are such a big part of this book. My mother cursed my name. We'll talk more about the title in a bit, but every woman is named with a lot of intention. And then there's a way that the naming of the person plays out, perhaps against the intent of the naming. And
Mhm.
it's a bit funny and disastrous. Like, right? It's like the name causes for this disastrous out outcome, but it's also kind of funny. And the way that you wrote it is such a light and like playful, humorous way that we can talk more about how all this came to you. So one of my annotations is just a family tree at the beginning, and then um, the characters in this book all have magical abilities, and they're such a magical family. And I thought that was so interesting. So I like made a note about that. Um, I wrote here in like the beginning, I'm like my annotation says, I love the courage and strong will of the Olivares women challenging, facing and challenging destiny, and I love their stubbornness. And then you like here I wrote a little LOL, and then I just decided to tab every time I laughed out loud because you know, Anamely, I've met you in person, and you're a very sweet person, but in your writing, you're so playful and funny, and in just like a hi and bye in a passing interaction, I wouldn't know that about you, but you have such a really great sense of humor. And I think you handle that really well in how you write. And so I mean, I'll hear more about that, but those are my annotations of like just things that I love, times that I laughed, and songs in the book that you wrote. You know, you really have this connection to music and the story. And then the magical realism elements of the book. I just wanted to keep tracking them because there are some chapters, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but there are some chapters where you end it in like a magical realism scene, and then the next chapter picks up in a different way with a different woman, but it's or a different voice, because Felicitas is a girl, but you they pick up right where you left off. So if you talked about a river at the end of a chapter, then the next chapter maybe starts with the word river, or like alludes to a river in some metaphorical way. And I thought that was really brilliant and beautiful. So those are my annotations. Those are the kinds of things that I was noticing that were speaking to me.
Thank you for noticing all those
Noticing.
little things and even thinking about like who I am as a person and writer, because I guess I do think I do that as well. I think who wrote this, and I don't search every author whose work I read, but I do find myself being curious
Mhm.
about who they are. Because you might search up someone and you don't find anything about them. I know if you search me, you won't find anything. Because as you said, I'm very shy and very private. Um, but yes, even when stories are fiction, they're informed by an experience or a relationship or just someone's personality. And that's not something you can necessarily annotate because you don't know that person. But yes, I'm so glad that curiosity is there. Again, I'm flattered and thankful.
Yeah, yeah. I was definitely curious about your process and how this story came about because I mean, I'm going to keep saying it again and again. I think it was a brilliant story. And I'm looking at my phone here because I have my notes on my phone. But I want you to tell me about your writing life. Um, how did it find you, or did you find it? Did you work your way to becoming a writer and publishing, or did it just find you? Did the story just come to you and then it was, maybe right place, right time? So tell me more about how that happened for you.
I think when it comes to publishing, you always have to work towards that. The opportunity will never just find you. So, yes, to working towards it. But the story itself, and even I guess just the writing of it all as well, found me. I never thought of myself as a writer, and I didn't write. I had never written anything before this story other than academic papers. Or if it was something creative, then it was for school. So it's still school related and it's assigned by someone. It's not something that necessarily came from my own desire to write. But I did love reading, as I think every writer has to love reading. That's how you learn, in part, to write. I don't have any background in writing. I never studied it. As I said, never really tried it. But I started writing this during the pandemic. I was in grad school in California, and when the pandemic hit, I was living in student housing. So they told all the students, leave, because you can't all be here. And I came back home to the valley, and I was with my mom in her house. And I was really bored because I couldn't go out. And even school, they were very lenient and just they told people to take things slow. Also, I'm in a graduate school program, so I can make my own schedule other than the few courses that I was taking. I just had a lot of time and a lot of boredom, and I was also kind of in a reading slump because I was just reading a lot of academic papers, a lot of research papers. And yeah, I wanted something creative, but I just didn't know what to read. So I started writing something to read something. I wanted to create a story that interested me. And the very first chapter is the first thing I wrote. And I think that's the one chapter that didn't really change throughout the editing process. So that's like the core where we start with the families, the
Hmm.
family names. Yeah, that's like the foundation. And once I wrote that, then I was curious about what would happen to this family. And so I just kept writing and writing. And I was truly writing for fun. I didn't think anyone would read it. I wouldn't have wanted anyone to read it because those first drafts, not good. And I think that's okay. 'Cause I thought the intention wasn't for someone else to read it or for it to get published. But then I went back to California. School picked up a bit more again, was able to go out, had less time, but I still wanted to write because I was curious about the story. And eventually it almost was almost like a full finished novel. And I was kind of unhappy with what I was doing at the time in terms of school and career trajectory. And I wasn't so conscious about it at the time, but I do think part of me wanted to have something else in my life that did make me happy. And that's when I thought about writing for a longer time. And in order to do that, maybe I could publish this and make it a bit more official. So then I sought out to publish this novel. But that was not the intention when I first wrote it. It was just for me. And it still feels like it's for me. But once I started entering the publishing journey, that's when fear started because then I realized, oh, people are going to read this. Hopefully, also, there's a possibility that no one's going to read this. But if people read it, how will they engage with it? Will they like it? Will they not? Again, I had no writing experience, so I wasn't sure if this was like the worst thing ever written. I don't think it is, but there was those moments of thinking that.
Yeah, the self-doubt always finds you, right? Like we all
Mhm.
experience that when we're doing something, especially when you're doing something out of your comfort zone or something new, that self-doubt just kind of finds you, and it's one of those monsters we have to face
And defeat.
and defeat. Yes. Um, I read the acknowledgement section in the back, and it was so sweet. And you talked about it right now, how this was new in the publishing journey, and the way you thanked your family, particularly your mom, for believing in you and like this publishing journey, this publishing thing that you've never done before, and you're learning together. And so I gather from just your acknowledgments that you had the support of your community, right? Your friends, your family. And I just think that that's really great. And it was really sweet to read that in the end.
Yeah, I think they seemed more excited than me because I had that fear. So seeing their excitement was definitely helpful
Yeah.
to feel excited myself.
Yeah. Well, I want to join your fan club. I want to join the people that are excited for you and are like cheering for you to continue to, bring stories into the world.
Thank you.
Um, the first chapter was really, really strong, and I actually tabbed parts that I wanted to see if you would give me permission to read aloud.
Mhm.
Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay. Um,
I mean, the story's out there. People can have access to it.
so just to kind of recap for the audience, if you haven't read, there won't be any spoilers. So I will not read any spoilers, and we won't go into spoiler territory for anything. But it's about three women in a family, well, two, three generations, two women and one child, and through them, we get to uncover family secrets and work through um, fa family tensions and grief and loss, and really deal with some of the family issues that may come up. There were two sections here that made me really nostalgic, and nostalgia is a vibe here. And there's so many emotions in this book. I recently did a video on my booktube channel, and I'm an emotional reader, and I found that this book really um, felt emotional to me. So these are the two passages that I want to read. The first one is on page 4. Life made a point of protecting Calamidades from disaster. When a hurricane hit the northeast of Mexico, Calamidades' coastal hometown, Matamoros, remained completely untouched. 10 years later, when a 5-year drought hit the region, rain fell over Calamidades' house and only her house, once a month without fail. 6 years after the end of the drought, a swarm of deadly wasps invaded the county. But if you ask the people of Matamoros what the monstrous insects looked like, they could not say. The wasps flew right around the city's outer limits, leaving no victims or remnants of despair. At the age of 26, Calamidades was blessed with a beautiful daughter, whom the doctor declared to be the healthiest baby he had ever delivered. Calamidades named the baby Victoria, so that she could triumph in every task she set out to complete. With the belief that her daughter was safe and sound and destined to be victorious, Calamidades passed away peacefully in her sleep on her 30th birthday. Victoria Olivares was not successful in anything that she did, which was quite unfortunate when the stakes were high. She failed almost every exam in school, was always chosen last when forming teams in the playground, and lost every game of damas chinas she played with her great aunt Daria in the 10 years she got to spend with her before the woman passed away from old age. I'm going to just stop there. And that part was nostalgic to me because the damas chinas. I remember my grandmother had a damas chinas. I was born in Monterrey, and I remember in my grandparents' house in Monterrey, they had a damas chinas. So when I saw that, I immediately thought of my grandparents' house in Mexico and how much they love damas chinas. And I wrote a little note here on a sticky. My favorite old school table games in my family's home in Monterrey were dominó, lotería, and damas chinas. And I'm just curious, what is your relationship to damas chinas?
I actually never played it with my grandmother. Oh, well, I think most often of my maternal grandmother because she is the one I got to spend more time with because she lived right across the border. But it was actually played a lot more from my dad's side of the family, and I never played it with my paternal grandmother either, but I did play it with my aunt, so my dad's sister. That my dad's side of the family is further south, so I don't get to see him as often. But when I visit my aunt and my uncle in Mexico City, that's where they live right now. Yeah, they bring up the game and we got to play. Unfortunately, both of my grandmothers have passed away at this point, and yes, I think if I was a child, maybe I would have been a little less interested in the board games, or just like sitting down and sitting still. But as a teenager and as an adult, I got to appreciate those moments a lot more. And because you're not just playing, you're also talking at the same time. And maybe you're eating and drinking, and it's just there's something in front of you, but and that you're paying attention to, but you're actually paying attention to each other
Mhm.
a lot more. And I wanted to bring that in, um, yeah, to show that you're enjoying something together.
Yeah.
Yeah, my experience is more with my aunt, actually. So it's a work of fiction, but it is based on different relationships and different experiences with different people in my family. And then they pass certain things onto this family, but it's not like an exact, like this was my experience type of thing.
And for people who don't know, damas chinas, because I'm saying it in Spanish, and throughout this interview, I'm probably going to just keep going back and forth, like code switching. But damas chinas is Chinese checkers, and I still have my. I think one of the first toys that I got when we immigrated to the United States was a Chinese checkers, and I can't part with it. You know, I never play it because it just hasn't come up. I don't have children, so I don't have anybody to play with. Um, but I can't part with it because of the emotional, just cultural um, significance. So that really touched me as a reader.
Yeah, the board that I have, it's not something I've had for forever. I got it once I was slightly older because I enjoyed it so much playing with my aunt, and I wanted to play with my mom. And she definitely does not like to sit still and play things. I think it's something in French. She is a lot more, she likes to be more active. But I got one for myself, for me to own, even if it doesn't, the thing itself doesn't have a history. I guess owning it, I know the intent behind it.
Mhm. And then the other passage that I wanted to read, this one you had me like salivating and like you made me crave something. And in my channel name is Books and Bocadillos. So I always talk about the intersections of literature and food. And if there's food in the writing, it's like extra points for me. And I was so sad that I was on a detox. I'm going through a detox at the moment. So you made me crave a picadilly. And just I'm still like thinking about it. As soon as I finish this detox, I'm gonna go, like one of the first things I'm gonna do is go buy myself a picadilly. Um, for the audience who's not from the valley. So Anamely and I, we both share culture, right? We're both living in the same physical space of the Rio Grande Valley in deep South Texas, south of San Antonio, right on the border. And I think one of the best things about living in this area is the snacks. the food, the junk food vibe is just the best here. And if you ever come and visit the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas, you're gonna find a bunch of taquerias and raspa stands. And these snack shops, snack stops, raspa stands, they're, referred to in different ways. They sell just the most imaginative concoctions of flavors that just all blend together from spicy to sour, to sweet, and it's just all in one thing. And one of my favorites is a Piccadilly. And I'm not talking about the London Piccadilly, but it's maybe inspired by just how much is going on in the London's Piccadilly is in this one snow cone. We call it raspa, and it has shaved ice with a sweet syrup and then pickles and tamarindo and chamoy, and those are all like Mexican candies and syrups and so from the in the same chapter we get to angustias. This is what I want to read. Angustias always arrived at school at the last minute, studied for exams at the last minute, and apologized to teachers at the last minute, barely saving herself from a trip to the principal's office, all without an ounce of worry in her heart. Angst was a foreign concept to Angustias. So when her 16th birthday rolled around and she discovered she was pregnant, Angustias was ecstatic. Olvido was mortified. Olvido is her mother. Angustias's daughter's name came to her through divine intervention. She was sitting in the passenger seat of her boyfriend's car, rambling about the movie they were on their way to see, when she had a sudden craving for sour pickles, sour gummy worms, and a jumbo sour slushie. She ordered her boyfriend to stop the car and turn around. They had passed a gas station a few miles back. Her boyfriend refused. They would be late for the movie. Frantic, Angustias unlocked the car door and made a show of pulling the handle toward her. She didn't push the door open, but she had every intention of doing so. Her cravings had become so intense, she threatened to jump out of the car and walk all the way to the gas station if he did not take her there immediately. No quieres que tu hija salga con cara de pepinillo, ¿verdad? She warned. Her boyfriend stared, and I put LOL there because I was like literally laughing out loud. Her boyfriend stared at her perplexed. He understood Spanish fairly well, but Mexican sayings always went over his head. If you don't satisfy your pregnancy cravings, Angustias explained, your child will be born looking like the food you desired. Angustias's boyfriend scrunched his nose. That doesn't make any sense. Yes, it does, Angustias argued. Mexican sayings sometimes sounded silly, but they carried the wisdom of 100 generations. One could not possibly fight 100 generations worth of wisdom unless they were dumb and reckless, and Angustias was reckless, but not dumb.
She was.
But I don't know. I just was so craving just the food of the area, and I I'm just wondering, Anamely, what if you have any thoughts to add or your favorite snacks in the valley, or what were you thinking of when you wrote this?
I was definitely thinking of the valley. I mean, at that point, I was here, but I had gone, as I said, I had left for school, and even though I wasn't gone for very long, that feeling of I want to be home hit me pretty quickly. And so now I actually was home, wanted to write about it in this story. And as you said, snack stands are a huge thing here. And I guess I wasn't so intentional about it, especially because I wasn't writing with the intent of someone reading this. I didn't think I need to include this so that other people understand the area. It's just my own experience. So I write what I know, and I know snacks. I know valley snacks. My go-to order is just a chamoyada.
Oh, yum.
Yes,
Yeah.
not even a mango nada because I don't want the mango to take away from the taste of the chamoy. I just like a chamoyada. And yeah, it's my personal experience to be craving sour snacks,
Hmm.
so I included it, and also my personal experience to be hearing crazy sayings, and so that's what I wrote about.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it just all stems from reality.
Yeah. Yeah. All of the stuff you wrote is 100% like great representation of, I mean, I think that I told you the yellows are the dichos, and some of those had me laughing out loud. Like this, just dichos are sayings or refrains that older generations might use on you. Calladita te ves más bonita, or like things like that that you hear just often, and you like use those refrains to illustrate the tensions and the relationships and the things, the dynamics, the family dynamics so well. You've talked a little bit about um, how you were inspired to write the story, and you mentioned that you are also a reader, and that writers oftentimes have to have this love of literature to find their craft, their voice, and what are your literary influences, or who are your literary influences?
Well, there's a lot of magical realism in the story, so obviously I'm inspired by other stories with magical realism.
Mhm.
Specifically, the stories I got to read in school. It wasn't just something I sought out, although like I'm thankful that my teachers were able to expose me to those kinds of stories. So I'm thinking like Como Agua para Chocolate and En Amor en los Tiempos de Cólera. So a lot of Latin American influences um, inform my writing, but also US Latino writers who also use magical realism. So I'm thinking like Ana Castillo and Rudolfo Anaya and more contemporary works. There's Elizabeth Acevedo. And at the time, right before I started writing, I was reading Sabrina and Corina by Fajardo-Anstine.
I love that book.
And yes, I was reading it for a book club. And I think that inspired me to want to write a story because that's a short story collection, so it's no full-length novel. I think that's also why I wasn't thinking of writing a full-length novel. I just wanted to write something that created those similar feelings that I got when I read that short story collection. So a lot of Latino writers, either from Latin America or from the US, and I think everything I read, even if it has nothing to do with the subject matters in this story, like everything is just inspiring in a way to be able to read something and then get an emotion from it, an emotional reaction. It makes me want to be able to do the same. And I don't necessarily know how, but I want to figure it out. Whether, regardless of the genre or whether it's a full-length novel or a short story or what the topic is. I think just reading and being able to engage with other people's words, it inspires me to find the right words myself, which I know I'm struggling to find the right words right now as I'm speaking. I I think I write better than I speak, but
No, I'm following what you're saying, and I think that I'm just listening to you, and I'm just feeling like so honored to be having this conversation with you about I think you and I have very similar reading tastes. As readers, we like the same stuff. And I see this book like on my shelf. I see it just along those like on the same shelf, like with Como Agua para Chocolate, the Inheritance of Orquidea Divina, definitely like El Amor en esos tiempos del cólera, and also like Cien Años de Soledad, like like and Eva Luna, like it's just this to see you come up with such a strong debut and such like an like awesome, truly like I feel like you hit it. Like you represented the strong sense of place so well. You did such a great job writing these characters. And to see you in the canon of like alongside my favorite writers of all time, like it's just an amazing feeling. And I'm just so grateful to you for, creating this other story that can live on the shelf of like my favorites. So
Thank you.
I know you'll continue to find the words to tell our stories.
I hope so.
And magical realism is it's not a genre, and it's not like I feel like it's kind of hard to categorize because the, there's it's an element of literature, like it's a way of writing, it's a stylistic choice that you make to like go into this skill of writing something um in this vein, right? But it's not necessarily like it's kind of like not fully fantasy, and it's not, there aren't any dragons in here. There's there's women, and they're able to have this wisdom and have this ability that is there's a whole conversation in here with Felicitas, who is a young girl and her friends, and they're talking about the word paranormal. And that also sends me in my thoughts, like what does paranormal mean? What is paranormal? And you play with words so well, and you have this way of like challenging like wordplay and meaning and in such a fun way. Like I really feel like if you and I had been girls at the same age at the same time, like you would have been my best friend because it was just so much fun to play with words, and to just like, what does this mean? And there's a scene in here where you talk about the word empalagar.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about it this morning because I was eating a cantaloupe and it was way too sweet. And the only way that I could describe how I couldn't finish my bowl of melon because I was like, me empalagué. And I remembered Felicitas having that issue with me empalagué and not being able to say, because there's no really way to, no right way to translate that. And when you're a person navigating two cultures and two languages, and sometimes one language doesn't have what you need to say, and you rely on the other language to help you express. Um, and I as I was eating the melon, I was thinking about Felicitas and her experience and learning from her experience and feeling like, you know what, she's right. Like, and I mean, you have to read the story to find out what happens, but Anamely does such a great job of like using these words and making these choices to show how how challenging it is to live between two languages and two cultures, and how sometimes people just don't understand if you haven't been in that experience. You don't live in on the border, you don't live in South Texas with navigating two cultures and two languages. It might be hard for people to really understand what you're trying to say when you're trying to speak. And sometimes I feel like when you and I are talking, we're juggling our expressions and trying to think, am I conveying this fully in this language? And sometimes we code switch because maybe there's another way of expressing the same thing in Spanish that just really says it better.
Mm.
I don't know. That's
Yeah,
just me.
that is my experience as well of just not necessarily struggling to find the words, although I do struggle to find words all the time, but just having to choose the right word to convey meaning. So talking about the valley, as we said, we're both from the valley. I do feel very privileged to be here because other people have similar experiences as me and we share language, and I don't have to think so hard about whether I'm saying the right thing. Like if I say me empalagué to someone, they'll understand what I'm talking about. And it wasn't until I left that I realized that it is a privilege to be able to speak to people so freely and to be understood so easily. And yeah, my experience is not the same as Felicitas, even though she's the character I relate to the most. That struggle of I feel so misunderstood is not something I experienced growing up here. And I wanted to write about it to also show how thankful I am that I didn't have to experience that. And it's not like everyone here understands each other, but yeah, I do think it's kind of a blessing to not have that stress all the time of am I choosing the right word? Are people understanding me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
in that section that I was alluding to,
Mhm.
just to give people context, Felicitas is in a school outside of the Rio Grande Valley, outside of South Texas. They've left the state, right? And she's in a classroom, and she to empalagar means that something is overly sweet and that your taste buds have just had enough of it. Like you can't really eat anything anymore because you can't taste anything because they're kind of numb because the sweetness of just has just overpowered your tongue and your taste buds, and you can't, like, it's too much. It's the sweetness has reached a level and it's too much. So you can't eat because you can't taste anything anymore. And so in Spanish we say me empalagué, like I'm done, like I can't, I'm done with sweet. Maybe I need something else. Maybe I need to like give my taste buds a break, or change my palate a bit. And so there's really no word or expression that I could think of either to say that. And for like a young child, you know, who doesn't have the same vocabulary that an adult person would have, maybe the only thing that she could say was me empalagué because that's what she knows and that's what's familiar. Um, but she's made fun of, right? And she has this experience of shame in the classroom. And that scene also reminded me of Sandra Cisneros' story 11. Have you ever read that one?
I love that story.
I love that story too. And so in that moment, I thought about that story, and I just, it hit me like in
Mhm.
deeply. Um,
When I mentioned when I mentioned wanting to write something that creates an emotion within you, even though you're not experiencing something, like you're just reading about someone else's experience, I always think of that story and how I cry every time I read it because I feel like I'm in that classroom and I'm that little girl and I'm yeah, that's a big story for me that like that's the bar.
yeah.
That I don't know if I reach the bar all the time, but
Well,
yeah, with
you made me
Felicitas
think of
as
it.
well, as I said, I don't share all of Felicitas' experiences, but when I was writing her, she felt like a real person, and
Hmm.
I wanted to show empathy
Hmm.
and yeah, give her grace. And yeah, I do kind of share some experiences. I lived in Mexico until the age of 6, and when I moved here, I was put in an all English class because we have a lot of schools that have both English and bilingual classes. And the principal or teacher, whoever was in charge, I don't know, I was a child, I don't know what was going on. They thought it would be a good idea to put me in a classroom where it was just English so I could learn faster. And I didn't know English at all. So I did struggle. So I guess I do share that experience of being misunderstood. It's just I know I'm lucky that once I was out of that classroom, I could kind of breathe again. And it wasn't just home that was safe. It was every other place beyond that one classroom where I was only allowed to use English. Whereas Felicitas didn't have that. It was just Angustias, who was like her safe space.
Yeah. Yeah. So the three women in the story that we're talking about are Olvido, who is the matriarch at this point, right? She's the grandmother. And then it's Angustias, who's the one stuck in the sandwich generation. So she's has her elderly mom and she has her young daughter. And Felicitas. And the fun thing with the nameplay is that Olvido is named Olvido so that that way she might, she might be able to forgive
Forgive
easily
and
and be
forget.
forgiven and, not um not have to live with like stress or consequences or, anything like that. Um and then Angustias is named Angustias because Olvido feels like, no, I want her to worry. I want her to, to be conscientious and I want her to avoid problems that might happen. I don't want her to be reckless with her life. And so the intent was that if I name her Angustia, she's going to be very like type A, conscientious, and Angustia is nothing like that. She's very carefree, free-spirited, um, doesn't plan anything, this is just living very spontaneously 100% of the time. And and then she names her daughter Felicitas because she wants her daughter to experience joy and be this light and this joy. And Felicitas is actually, I imagine Wednesday, the character Wednesday Addams, in my mind as I was reading Felicitas' character. She wears black. She has a sour expression and a scowl, like a permanent scowl on her face. And there was a funny section when she's born, the nurses decide that they're not going to have kids because they feel like they've made this baby upset. And, and this is whole play, fun that you have playing with the word and like the reactions of people to the personality that is in front of them. And um, so Felicitas, is, I just felt like I kept seeing Wednesday Addams in my brain, that kind of the cloud over her head and that yearning. And in the in the whole story, in the way you tease out the story, we see them realizing that they need community as much as they need each other. And and how do they find that? And how do they open their hearts to letting other people in? Um, because I think that they've kind of become just self-reliant on one another and just very private, very like distant. And again, I want to avoid spoilers, but we know because I just read in the beginning, Angustias gets pregnant early, and then because of that pregnancy, she ends up moving away from her family and her culture, the Rio Grande Valley. So she's away, and she has Felicitas away, and that coming home, something happens and it brings them home. And where is home? And that exploration of home, and home is where your family is, home is where your house is, home is where people know you, right? And they understand when you say Mempalage, they understand what that means. And like all these ways that you talk about and you explore what makes a home. And in the end, I think that their search for home and finding that is in community is one of the most hopeful things in this novel.
Yes, I guess I was thinking a lot about home when
Mm.
I started writing. Even though I was home, it wasn't like a far away thing. But because I had been thinking about home right before, then I got to be home. I wanted to explore what that meant and how it could mean different things to different people.
We talked about, the books that we find that we've intersected with. Talked about 11 that just came to mind right now. How has your reading life changed since you became a writer, since you published a book?
I think, I mean, I've always read a lot. I think I'm back to reading more because, as I said, right when I started writing, I was kind of in a slump, and I know that happens a lot to people just based on talking to others, that you enjoy reading when, like, as you're growing up, and then there's something that happens in your late teens, early 20s that you maybe it's just life, or that there's not as many stories of people of that age, that you kind of struggle to find something to read. I feel like that's what was my experience. And there are stories out there. I just didn't know how to find them. And so I did have a period of not reading as much. And now I'm back to loving the experience. But I also find that I'm more aware of the type of stories that I like and seek those stories out. So I've realized I love stories about families, whether it's you're related or it's found family. And I love stories about women. So I feel like I only read stories about women, which is maybe bad. Maybe I need to diversify my bookshelf, but I have learned like those are the stories I like to read and write. So I'm gonna stick with that. And I just feel a lot more comfortable accepting that now. Like, yeah, this is my not necessarily genre, but this is my niche.
Yeah.
Mm.
Is there something that I'm just curious? Is there something that you've read recently that you recommend for maybe if, people like what you write, what is something that you read recently that you're like, oh, this is a good place to go?
Not so recently because it's been maybe a year, 2 years, but Family Lore by
Mhm.
Elizabeth Acevedo.
Mhm.
Very focused on family, which I
Mhm.
love. Has magical realism, which I love.
Mhm.
Focused on women, I love.
Mhm.
That's just like, oh yeah, that's the book. She wrote that for me.
Yeah.
And
Also
yes,
generational story.
generational story.
Mhm.
But I do open myself up to reading different genres. Sometimes I like to read horror. I've also learned to love audiobooks. Before I was just strictly physical book, not even ebook, and now can read in any type of way. But yes, I guess as a reader, the writing kind of showed me what I like, and so now I read what I am sure I'm going to like.
That's so hard. I'm glad
To
that you
find what
have
you
that
like.
ability. I don't feel like I have that ability. Um, I'm a very curious reader, so I read very broadly, but I feel like books surprise me, Like sometimes I may read something, and if it's something that's been hyped a lot, maybe I don't like reading books that are overhyped or that have a lot of hype because then I find myself disappointed. So sometimes I just like to read books that no one is talking about, or that um if someone says they didn't like a book, I'll give it a chance, because then I think, why didn't this person like this book? And I'm more curious about it then. So
I do
um
think, I know I said I'm maybe closing myself off from other stories, but I do think there's still diversity in what I like to read because not everything I read is Mexican American women or Mexican women and or from Texas or I don't know, from a border region. I think that I know I like to read about families and women, but there's just so many stories that can be included in those categories. And I still like to open myself up to women's stories from other parts of the country or other parts of the world. And there is diversity within women's stories and within the women's fiction genre. I know people think that's a very limiting name for a genre, but I think like there's so many women's stories out there that you can't say that that's like too limited.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you, I'm just saying people
Yeah.
in general
No.
talk about, yeah, they don't like that name. But I
No.
do because it lets me know that's a women's story. I'm gonna when I picked up that book.
Yeah, I think that as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking that I think I know what you're saying now. I think that I know that multi-generational stories are going to work for me. Like your novel is a multi-generational stories, family lore. I'm also thinking about like Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. You mentioned leaving the Latin American literary canons, like going into like, Pachinko, Girl, Woman, Other, like some of these other books that I've read that I've really, really loved. I love that there's different um voices and like multiple generations of women. And I really enjoy that. And multiple perspectives is always fun to have in a book for me.
Yes.
And your book has, three points of view. You talked a lot about, I mean, this whole book, you don't talk about it, but you show it. Like, it's not something that you're preaching, but you're showing us through the stories. You have the three generations of women, a granddaughter, a mother, and a grandmother. And motherhood is such a big part of the story. And I'm a big fan of motherhood stories. I'm not a mom, but I really like thinking about mothers and daughters and that's such an integral part. Like that thread is very, very strong in this novel. And like I said earlier, you see these women working on what's broken, what's broken in their relationships with each other, and then allowing community to come and finding a place and a way to heal um, and and forgive and mend and transform and like there's so much that these women are doing in their own special ways through their own gifts and abilities to to reach a point of like, okay, we can work this out, we can overcome, we can mend this. um and I mean, I want to say that I feel like that you do so well with that. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on mothers and daughters and particularly in Latin American literature.
I'm also not a mother, but I am a daughter
Mhm.
and a granddaughter and sister. And I grew up with just my mom. And so for me, that's like my the biggest relationship in my life. I also grew up mostly around women. I said I have a sister. I lived for some time with my grandmother. My grandfathers passed away before I was even born, so I only knew my grandmothers. And yes, it was always a very female-centered household. Um, so as I said before, like right from I write what I know, and I feel like I only know girls and women's relationships, and it just came very natural to want to explore that. But I also thought a lot about my mom's relationship with her mother and grandmother, and I guess I wasn't thinking about fathers because I didn't really know about that. So I was curious when it came to her, I was also curious about her relationship with her mother, even though I know she grew up with her dad as well, and brothers and uncles. And yeah, when I thought of her, I guess I was reflecting on my own experiences. Even when I was thinking about her, I was thinking about me. And the relationships that these women and girl have in the story isn't necessarily the same as my own relationship with my mother and her relationship with her mother. But there is some truths. I just won't say which ones out of privacy and
Mhm.
respect for other people.
Mhm.
Um, but even when the experiences weren't necessarily the same, the emotions were honest.
Mhm.
And yeah, I wanted to explore how even when on the outside and also on the inside, the relationship isn't the best or it doesn't seem perfect, the love that you feel for someone is still very much real
Mhm.
and can almost seem unavoidable and out of your control to want to maintain a relationship with someone who you've been in conflict with. Um, I think that's not just about mothers and daughters, but maybe Mexican families in general, that you fight,
Mhm.
either small fights or big fights, and yet you're still in each other's lives. And
Yeah.
someone else might think, why? Just cut them off, but it's not that easy. And sometimes it is necessary, but it's not easy. And yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to explore because
It,
I'm also curious as to why that happens. I don't have an answer.
mhm.
Is
It
it
resonates.
culture? Is it just an emotional thing? I'm not sure. I don't think the story finds a conclusion in that sense. It's just that that is the reality.
Yeah. I mean, I thought the ending was beautiful. Um, it was just absolutely beautiful. And I I'm trying to hold back tears because like I feel like my eyes starting to like get teary. Um, I told you, I don't know if I told you off camera or on camera, but like this story really found me at just the right time. And relationships are always really challenging. And no relationship is ever perfect. And mothers and daughters, I think we all do the best we can with what we know and what we have and our ability, right? And I think for the most part, um, in our own ways, we try to like forgive and mend and be like love one another, like because we're family and family is such a big value in our, cultural value and it's like we're just a part of each other's lives. And I felt like I finished the book and the first thought that came to mind is I need to call my mom. Um, like it felt like I'm like I need to call my mom. I need, like it just it felt like you were calling me home, you know, even though I am home. I'm in the Rio Grande Valley. I'm in my home um in Texas and I feel very much at home. But I think through the story, it hit me in a really deep and special way as I was reading it because it was very real. And that's the one thing I want to stress is that I think maybe for some of the audience, and like some of your readers, if they it'll resonate, I think across cultures, but even um if it doesn't, I think it's such a it's such a human experience. It's part of humanity to have these dynamics, these mother-daughter dynamics sometimes. And I did feel like you were calling me home, home to like maybe there's something I need to say or something I need to forgive or something I need to ask forgiveness for, and so it it was really meaningful. So you managed to do that without even saying that. Like, you didn't preach about it, you didn't preach about motherhood, you didn't talk about it. You just showed the story of these women finding their way home in their own ways. And and it was just so stunning and so beautiful and heartfelt. I'm curious if anybody else is watching this and you've read this book, even if it's a year or 3 years from now and you're just watching this video interview, let me know if this book resonated with you. I feel like it it did for me. And I really think that as someone that lives in the area and has had some similar experiences to the women, being an immigrant and um, leaving home and coming home and all of those things that Olvido and Angustias and Felicitas to some extent, but they go through it all felt very relevant and real. And speaking of immigration and being an immigrant, songs are such a big part of the immigrant experience. And you mentioned some of the songs in here. Um, the one song that I have here in my notes is México lindo y querido. There's a verse in the song. It's a Mexican mariachi song, and it says, "When I die, um, bring me home." Like, it's a call to your loved ones to bring your body home, to be buried at home. And I think that a lot of us immigrants, we leave our country of origin with the hope of someday being able to return, and even if it's in the afterlife of like being buried, being your remains to find their way home to the land. Um, I thought that was beautiful in their discussion and exploration of what it means to be home and where is home. And as I was reading, I was finding myself underlining and marking the places where you had different song references, and I created a playlist for myself on Spotify. Um, So I wanted to ask you if you created a playlist for this book, and what other songs would you put on your playlist for this book?
I did make a playlist. I made one as I was writing, but then I edited afterwards, knowing that I was going to share it with others. But I focused a lot on lyrics, and the way I made my playlist, each song relates to, like, if it's the beginning of the playlist, it connects to the beginning of the story, middle, end. And I focused more on what the song was saying than just the music or whether the genre would fit with the book. Um, what songs are in my playlist? I'll open it up right now. Let's see, there's a lot of Julieta Venegas. Where is my playlist? Oh my gosh, I have too many playlists. I actually love
Me
making
too.
playlists for
I do too.
myself. It
Maybe we
feels
can
seems
share playlists.
yes, it feels like I'm writing a no, when I'm making a playlist, like I'm curating. This is the scene.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's Julieta Venegas in it. There's for Texas, Casey Musgraves. Um, Dolly Parton. I know she's not from Texas, but you know that Southern
Hmm.
feel. I don't know. Check out the playlist. It's
I'll check
the
out the
same
playlist.
title as the book. Um, yeah, if you listen to it, I think it'll be easy to see how the lyrics fit with the thoughts of the characters and what they're experiencing. So, like one song is La Nostalgia, and it's when they're driving home and the nostalgia is hitting Angustias, and
Mhm.
she sees a Whataburger, and then she actually sees her house, and
Yeah.
it's that like the song talks about memories coming back, and so I related it to that those chapters. And there's a song by Nora Jones called Not My Friend. And that's when Felicitas, it's also towards the beginning, Felicitas is thinking of Olvido as that's not my friend and that's not my
Mhm.
grandma.
Mhm.
And yeah, this the expression, the lyrics and the emotions of the song relate to Felicitas' own experiences. Yeah, it's not so much about the genre of the song, but the lyrics. I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself at this
No,
point.
it's fine. I will check out, sorry, I dropped my phone. I will check out your playlist. I You're the author, so your lyrics are probably more spot on than mine. I went more with like the vibe. I kept thinking about what is Olvido loves to listen to the radio, right?
Mhm.
And we know that about her. You make it such a beautiful you in such a beautiful way. You use her love of music, and her love of listening to the radio within the story. And um, so I would just imagine on a day, what would Olvido's radio be playing? And so I
Mhm.
put like a lot of like the Vicente Fernandez, las clásicas mexicanas, and then um I was going for vibes, and I thought like I don't know why I just felt Silvana Estrada has a major vibe with your book. So I've been listening to Silvana Estrada for days now because it's the vibe of the book, and I've just kind of been trying to like feel the book.
The first playlist I made for it was more about vibes because I was in the process of writing. I did have a lot of Silvana Estrada
Mhm.
in
Okay, I feel validated now.
it. Yeah.
Um,
I guess there's two type of playlists. There's the
yeah.
vibes playlist and then there's the lyrics playlist.
Okay, so we have two playlists for this book going.
Yes.
I mentioned to you that my channel is Books and Bocadillos, so we talk a lot about I like to talk a lot about food and writing, and I love cozy literature because food is such a big part of cozy lit. And I would say, I'm not trying to pigeonhole your book in any way, but I would say that if I recommend this book, I'm going to recommend it to like cozy people who dig cozy. I think
Mhm.
that there's a lot of coziness in this book. It's not a cozy mystery, and it's not like strictly that, but it is some of that. There is a part that feels like a mystery. There are some like mysterious like feelings in the book. But I just felt your writing of food also very much along the lines of Como agua para chocolate, like water for chocolate, um, by Laura Esquivel. That mention of food, and Elizabeth Acevedo also writes about food in such a magical way with the fire on high. So I was thinking a lot about food, and wanted to pitch a scenario to you. So Olvido, the grandma, Angustias, the mom, and Felicitas, the girl, they walk into a panaderia, which is a Mexican bakery. What pastry matches their personality? Do you have any thoughts? I have my pairings, but I'll let you go first.
Um, Starting off with Felicitas because she's my favorite. Not that I should have favorites, but she's my favorite. I actually think she's the most difficult to pick one, to like pick a pastry for her. maybe because she is a child and she's still finding herself, that I'm also figuring out who she is. She's not, her personality is not as set as Angustias and Olvido, but I know she likes order and things to just make sense. And so I would go with something very classic and just go with a concha, which may seem boring, but I feel like she would just like, I know what this is, everyone knows what this is, and I like this structure. Like this is the go-to bread. Unless it's a special occasion, and then it would be pan de muerto, which is not something that you would see all the time.
Uh-huh.
But when it is, a little extra side to her would come out and she would pick pan de muerto. And then she would say something about like, oh, is there a dead person baked into this? I think she would like to pick that bread just to make that kind of comment. For for angustias, I would pick the besos. You know, it's like two breads and then
Uh-huh.
there's a jelly in the
Uh-huh.
middle,
Yeah.
connecting them. They're covered either in sugar, like coconut mixture
Mm-hmm.
thing, because one, I think she would like that it's called Kiss. She's just like, ooh, I really like that name.
Yeah.
But also she's that jelly that holds the two breads together, the two breads that seem a bit boring to other people. That's like Angustias and, sorry, Felicitas and Olvido.
Good video.
Angustias is the jelly holding these two boring people together and being the fun one. And for Olvido, I would also go with something very classic, just empanada, specifically de calabaza.
Mm-hmm.
She's more mature, and that's a mature flavor that maybe a child would say ew to, like they would prefer at least de piña or something else. But she would be like, no, calabaza, because it's natural
Yeah.
and yeah, not overly sweet. That's what I would pick for them.
Okay, we agreed on one,
Mhm.
which is really fun. So for Felicitas, I picked a churro because I was
Mhm.
like, she's a child, and a churro, it can be filled, it cannot be filled, and it's long, and I think it's just fun, and it's fried, and it's sugary, and it's sweet, and maybe it would just kind of, it's not her vibe. Sweetness is not her vibe, but I felt like in the story, we see her come to a point where she's starting to think about things differently, and she's starting to think like, why do I always wear black? And like she's starting to like you see her maybe starting to explore. And so I think a churro might be a curious thing for her. And it might not be her vibe, but it's something different that might be fun to try. And for Angustias, I picked the pastelitos, the little cakes that have pink frosting and sprinkles,
Mhm.
because it's like always her birthday, in her world.
Oh, that's
And
true.
so I just felt like that would go, and she sees colors, she can see auras and clouds, and I feel like the pink is just her happy color. And um not magenta, right? Like she's like, just can't get to magenta, but just
Yeah,
pink is just fluffy
just
enough. So
right.
I picked um that one. And for Olvido, that's the one we agreed on. I picked the empanada de calabaza, the traditional, the because I felt like it's just what there are no surprises with an empanada. You know what it is. It's very predictable,
Mhm.
very simple, very earthy. And like you said, I also thought about empanada is like it's a fold, and like holding things together. And I feel like Olvido is gonna hold Angustias and Felicitas together for the rest of their lives in a very special way. It, she's created a bond for them to both have with one another through her. Um, Even in the afterlife, even after you know, when she's no longer with them, they're always gonna have her, so I felt like that worked. We're almost to the end here, and I just have a couple of quick questions. So, just about the physical presentation of the book. Where did the title come from?
I don't know. My brain, I just needed to pick something. As I mentioned, I wrote just to write, and it wasn't until I decided that I wanted for it to be published and I needed to find an agent that I thought, well, I need to tell them a title, to give them a title. And that's the first thing that came to mind. I didn't think about it a lot, which is a problem now because now I don't know how to think of titles because that one just happened to come to me, but it came and it made sense. The Obviously it's a story about mothers, and so there's the word mother in it, and they are experiencing these curses through these special abilities that they have, but that thing that we were talking about of wanting to separate yourself from someone and not being able to for some reason that you can't explain, that's what feels like a curse to
Mhm.
them.
Mhm.
There's the literal curse, and then there's the more metaphorical curse of being tied to each other that feels like it's a curse that they need to break. And maybe they come to realize it's not necessarily a curse, they think things differently, but at least there's that initial feeling of they feel like they're being cursed by this connection. The word name as well. The title of My Mother Cursed My Name, you find out from the very first pages what the naming curse is. So there is an actual literal curse that deals with names and mothers. But I think there's more to it that I wasn't fully aware when I thought of the name. But then afterwards, I was like, yes, I'm glad that that was it. And it captures your attention because I also needed to capture someone's attention for them to read the book. And I just thought, okay, perfect.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
And I
great.
do think it helped me to get an agent's attention.
And the artwork here is like gorgeous.
Thank
I
you.
there's I'll let you explain this because I mean I've heard you talk about this before, but I'll go ahead and let you like talk about the artwork.
So there is meaning behind the symbol of the dandelion. When my publishing team talked to me about covers, they did ask me to give them some ideas of things I would like to see. And I don't know at what point I thought of the dandelion, but I had already, like, I was sure that that's something I wanted to pitch to them. Obviously, it was going to be a discussion, but they also liked it, so it was good. But yes, there's this dandelion, and there's three parts to it, and they're supposed to represent the three characters. So Felicitas, who's still a child, is the bud, and Angustias, who's the adult, is the fully formed flower, and Olvido, who has passed away from the beginning of the story, she is this actual dandelion that is being whisked away by the wind. So she's there, but not fully there. They're all connected by this stem, and that's the connection between the three of them. Also thought about it being upside down because Ovido's death kind of turns their whole world upside down, and now they have to, you said, come back home, figure out their feelings towards each other. And also with dandelions, people make wishes. You blow away the dandelion, and that's how your wish gets carried. And the reason why they go back home, or not why they go back home, but why Felicitas needs to get to know Olvido more and also reveal things to Angustias is because Olvido has this final wish of having her body be taken back to Mexico. And so, because the story revolves around that wish and how they're going to be able to accomplish that without speaking to each other, I wanted something that also represented wishes. And yes, I really loved the artwork that the team ended up creating. And I'm glad that they also like that symbol
Yeah.
because I gave them other options. And I'm like, I really hope you pick this one. And yes, I'm glad I had a good publishing experience where other people liked my vision, but also guided me because I was totally new to this as well. So it's not like the book was all me and my initial vision for everything, and I was completely right. I received a lot of help from various people to make this final product.
The only thing missing on the cover is the Pura Belpre medal. Like I really
Well,
want this book to win a Pura Belpre medal. Um,
that's for, I think, only children's
children's,
stories. So none of
yeah.
the
But
adult.
it would be so cool if it
Yeah.
could, you
Yeah, I
know.
could say like there's a child in it.
Yeah.
And I think children can read it. There's nothing that is
No.
out of the ordinary for a children's story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I hope that you get awarded something for it because I think it's just it should be on the shelf with all of our classics, you know, like
My award is being able to talk to people about it and to know that other people are reading it and that it's out there in the
Mhm.
world. I already feel like I want something. And yeah, that's all the recognition I need that someone said, yeah, I read it. Whether they said I liked it or didn't like it, just I read it. I'm like, great, thank you.
So what's next for Anamely?
I am not completely sure. I thought I was sure, and then now I'm not sure. I am writing. I hope to be able to finish what I'm writing someday, and whether it actually does make it out of my laptop or not, I know also deep down that it matters in a way, but at the same time, I'd just be happy to write something again just for me. So I do try to remember how this story came about of I was writing something for me and just trying to remember like if I'm writing, it's for me first, and then hopefully someone else would resonate with it and like it. But yeah, I'm trying to write. The overall conclusion is I'm trying to write, but it's going to take a while.
Okay, that's fair. One thing that I wish for, and I'm not like, and it's just my own little wish. I'm not expecting it to be fulfilled, but I love collecting cookbooks. I would love Olvido's cookbook. Olvido ends up, we end up discovering that she has this ability to cook food that has an impact, right? That has an effect on people. And so she talks a lot about food. Olvido's character was all about food, and it just left me wishing like for Olvido's cookbook. So if that's ever a thing that you do, I want to, sign up to like test recipes and veganize recipes and whatever. But um, yeah,
I
I would love to
wouldn't
see
put
that.
out a cookbook and I would not be able to give anyone a recipe because I actually don't. enjoy cooking. I wouldn't even know what to tell people. I need people to tell me. But if readers want to try a dish, put out a recipe and say, hey, it was inspired from reading this story, that would be pretty cool. But it would be other people
The
creating
next
that, not me.
the next time I make arroz con leche, I'm gonna post it and say in homage to Olvido. I love making arroz con leche, and so that's something that I would make and I dedicate to Olvido in the afterlife.
Oh, thank you. Yes, no, no cookbook for me. Maybe another novel, but not another, but not a cookbook.
Okay, that's fair. Anamely, thank you so much for joining me today. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you being here with us and talking to us about your book and just allowing me to gush about how much I loved your book.
Thank you for having me and for gushing about the book and for sharing this with others. I think word of mouth is very important for books to be discovered by readers, and I'm just very thankful for for sharing with others that you enjoy this book and for just simply reading. Like even if you hadn't told anyone, even if this video was not shared later on, just thank you for reading.
Anytime. You can count me in for future support and just, reading your books and just sharing my love for multi-generational family stories that are cozy and fun and well told. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.